One thing that's very special about the Twin Cities in Minnesota, it's large enough where there's a lot happening. It's small enough to navigate. And if you look at the history of what this place has produced, it is reliably creating businesses that start small, solve big problems, and expand globally. It's the land of the most corporate Fortune 500 companies per capita. It's home to some of the world's biggest companies and names and brands. It's been responsible for incredible leaps in healthcare technology and delivery, in retail technology and delivery, financial services. It's got a very sneaky and super powerful sports tech scene. Like, there's an incredible variety of industry here, and the deals are half price.
Reed, welcome to the SlicePod, where we uncover the stories of fresh emerging managers across early stage venture capital landscape. You are the co-founder and general partner of Groove Capital, a $15.5 million fund investing $250,000 checks in pre-seed companies primarily in Minnesota. Let's begin where we always do, by asking you, how did we get here? Was this always the plan, to be a fund manager?
Yes and no. I was fortunate to have a professor that was also a venture capitalist when I was going through college. He was one of the few people in town that did that and got exposed to the industry. That was more than 20 years ago. And so the path that led to me starting Groove was a long, winding road full of what seemed like disjointed experiences, but now kind of make a lot of sense in hindsight. I mentioned that to say, like, it was something that was on my radar that I wanted to do, but took a long time to get to a place where I was actually in a good position to do it.
What was the aha moment across all of these steps? Like, I understand that maybe it took a minute to pull the trigger, but there was ever a moment that you were like, I have to do this on my own. I have to do this project. I have to structure it this way. And how long from that moment until you actually pulled the trigger and ended up building Groove?
There was one important step. The last startup that I worked at, I didn't enjoy. I found myself pretty miserable in my job, and a number of things happened in my life at that time. I was about to have my first kid. I had a best friend nearly lose his partner, and another very close friend lose their fiance, all kind of within a month of each other. And I found myself looking at the time that I was spending during the day and realized I don't want to be spending my time doing something that I don't love. Life is too short. And so I decided to leave that job and run an organization full-time that I had co-founded about 7 or 8 years prior to that. That was just kind of my extracurricular life, and really challenge myself to do something on my own for the very first time and be responsible for the well-being of my job and my life and my family. And that ended up being really the perfect kind of lead in to Groove. That organization was called Beta. Beta was essentially an accelerator program here in Minnesota that worked with about 25 or so companies a year. Having that as my full-time job, that was a really important setup for now running Groove for probably two different ways. The first one was the challenge of learning what it's like to start something from nothing and have to sustain yourself with an entity and a structure and a strategy that is able to cover the expenses. The challenges of every little nuance of a business that you have to figure out for yourself when you're the only person there. I learned that in Beta. That gave me the confidence to know that I could do it again with Groove. The second piece that kind of ultimately led to that was, like, Beta was a 501c3 I'm an entrepreneur. And so the writing was on the wall from the beginning that this is not going to be my home forever. I really, really loved the work that we were doing with that organization, still care about it today, but felt like I could accomplish a lot of the same things that I was doing with that other organization as far as working with entrepreneurs, helping my ecosystem grow and thrive through another mechanism, and that was a venture fund. As I was leaving Beta, I remember having this experience where I didn't know exactly what I was going to do, but I knew that I shouldn't continue to be in that position because it's not what I wanted to do long term. And so I created a list of the things that I wanted to be spending my time doing, things I wanted in my next job. I didn't want to travel. I wanted to stay connected to the startup community. I took a really hard look at the things that I was really good at and the things that were truly my competitive advantage. And when I wrote it all down and kind of mashed it all together, the answer was Groove. I truly believe that relationships are one of the most important competitive advantages. And so Groove was really an extension of me looking at the relationships that I had established through myself professionally to that point in time and said, I'm in the middle of this, very unique and special opportunity. I know all of the founders in the area. They know who I am. I know all of the investors in the area. They know who I am. There's this wide open opportunity to really own and dominate the pre-seed space. I'm going to do that. And along the way, I'm going to build this in the way that I want it to be built. There was absolutely a time where I didn't think I had the energy to create something new again. But once I started putting it on paper and laying it out, started talking about it with my close friends and colleagues, it just kind of snowballed into something like, shoot, I think I've said too much. Like, I think I have to do this. I'm going to lose all credibility. Before I knew it, I was raising a fund and on my way towards that kind of first milestone.
Where does the name come from?
Oh man, I love that question. The inspiration comes from Prince. If you didn't know, Prince was from Minnesota. I think that music is universal. It makes you feel good. There's a little bit of a message in who we're trying to work with in the name. When you have gotten far enough along where you feel like you've caught your groove, that's kind of where we want to invest. And back to the Prince thing, if for those that are not familiar with the area, they'd be surprised that somebody who was so incredibly talented, so unique, and able to master their industry and take over the world is exactly the types of people that we're trying to find here in Minnesota. So I wanted a little bit of a shout out to somebody that I have great respect for, but I'm not going to call it Prince Capital or anything, related to the North. That's all played out. Groove really felt like it was kind of, let's give a middle finger to the industry. Let's do something that's a little bit more aggressive. Let's wear t-shirts. Let's turn the lights down and try to make this thing sexy because most people don't know this stuff exists. And so you have to be a little bit more aggressive with the branding to create the awareness. This is something unique. I wanted the brand to invite people in a way that will draw them.
I love it. And let's dig a little deeper in the land because you mentioned you didn't want to travel. You mentioned that you have to be more aggressive. You mentioned the tie between Minnesota and the name through the connection of Prince. Most people that want to do this pack up their stuff and move to San Francisco or New York and try and find their luck. So it sounds like you're trying to bring some fresh perspective to your local market. But why Minnesota? Why stay there? Why start a fund there? What is the advantage that you think that geography has or that you have relative to that geography that other people don't see? And has it been difficult to make people understand, especially on the limited partner side? I'm sure that there's good entrepreneurs all over the place.
Alpha is paramount, right? So how do you get alpha when running a fund? And for me, because My roots are deep here. I'm able to access stuff based on relationships. Back to my earlier comment that I can't do if I were to just take, some of the things that I've learned along the way and go to the Bay, like, yeah, I could figure it out, but I'm gonna have to make up these relationships from scratch. That's not necessary. I mean, there's enough activity happening here and a dearth of capital that there's a pretty compelling financial opportunity to fill for us to get something started and to show that we're good at what we do. Where we expand from there, we're thinking about and have some plans in place for. But I think one thing that's very special about the Twin Cities and Minnesota, it's large enough where there's a lot happening. It's small enough to navigate. And if you look at the history of what this place has produced, it is reliably creating businesses that start small, solve big problems, and expand globally. It's the land of the most corporate Fortune 500 companies per capita. It's home to some of the world's biggest companies and names and brands. It's been responsible for incredible leaps in healthcare technology and delivery, in retail technology and delivery, financial services. It's got a very sneaky and super powerful sports tech scene. Like, there's an incredible variety of industry here. And the deals are half price. I'd take that any day. I've got a bunch of categories that we can invest in, founders that don't chase the hype cycles. If they get excited about something, it's because they see an opportunity and they passionately pursue it, generally with less resources.
And let's talk about the competition. On the other hand, you would think that because of all of the advantages that you mentioned, there is a thriving venture capital scene, especially a pre-seed and seed. Is that the case? Or do you find yourself to be a lone voice in this space?
I think one of the trade-offs from a corporate perspective is the risk tolerance and the awareness of startup activity is less than it should be. There are people that are very educated and very capable of doing global scale in this town, but where you find the people that are able to go from 0 to 1, there's a community of it, and that community is growing. Those gears are oftentimes very challenging to connect because the cogs are such different sizes. And there's a lot of education that we have to push back against in order to get people comfortable with this asset class. You can look to other ecosystems that don't have the same economic muscles that we do, and we almost get a little too comfortable sometimes because of the stability of the variety of industries that in a environment where you're kind of limited, those types of spaces can often be very fertile for great innovations. I think we may have gotten a little too comfortable over the last 20, 30 years here, relying on some of those big, cushy corporate jobs that we started to take our eye off how do we plant the seeds of the next thing. That was something that I feel from a what do we want to accomplish at Groove in its core essence, outside of the financial return, like we want to be the ones that are responsible for seeding or watering the seeds of the next 2 or 3 Fortune 500 companies. If nobody's going to be investing in those companies right now, they're not going to exist. We have to be patient, but I'm confident that we're doing exactly what needs to happen in order to create the future that I might not actually participate in.
Do your LPs understand it? Are your LPs local, or are they from out of your geo looking to invest in this opportunity, or is it a mix of both? And do they understand the pitch? Is there a layer of education that you have to layer on top to explain why it's better to deploy capital where you are versus like in the fancy, more glitzy and glamorous tier 1 markets?
My first 20 LP commits in Fund One were entrepreneurs that I had met along the way through my experiences with this other organization that I started that had success, in many cases that had exited or were still currently operating. And so those people knew who I was and knew the work that we wanted to do together. And the geography and investing in this town was one of their primary motivations for investing in Groove. We went out of our way to say, this is not another seed investor that has kind of a focus on this area, but really is going to be investing more outside of the space when you check the work. We said 80-90% of our capital is going to be invested locally. And we've stuck to that now into Fund Two and more than 75 investments in. They care about this place like I do, and we wear our values on our sleeves as far as what is this fund about, who do we want to work with. Those values not just determine how we build our internal capabilities with our team, but it's who we look at and who we want to invest in. Do they share the same interests in creating a better local environment? It's the same with our LPs. Like everybody shares the same kind of interest, that kind of clarity around what we're trying to accomplish, weeds out the ones that aren't going to be a good fit, but really draws in those that desire to see the same outcomes.
I am focused basically across this new generation of emerging managers, whether it's a geography, whether it's a sector, whether it's a skill set. What makes you all successful is the focus. And it sounds like you're niching down in this place. It's fun too. I would assume that by now people know of you. You've, like you said, your roots run deep. You have a big network. If I'm a founder in Minnesota looking to raise capital, I would probably know about you before you know about me. Is that true? Where do the founders learn that you exist?
In creating Beta, I interjected myself and introduced myself to this town as an ecosystem builder. And I think I still have that. I don't go to as many events as I used to. That's part of being a parent of two little girls that are 6 and 3 and trying to spend some time with them. I'll never give that up. But I also just want to be present in the community and know that Groove is a resource if and when they're ready. We'll sponsor stuff. We'll show up. We'll judge things. That's the very, very top of the funnel. It's an investment in our future pipeline. We'll continue to make those investments in our time to be out there and sourcing deals. But the nice thing is now that we are writing checks, being fair with our founders, being constructive, being helpful, we put an incredible amount of effort into delivering really high quality investor communications and making sure that they're along for the ride and that they're involved. And I think by nature of the way that we're treating our founders and the nature that we're treating our LPs, the word is spreading. I think Fund Two, in looking at the last year and a half and how challenging things have been from a funding environment, we've been in the perfect spot at the perfect time. We're writing checks. We're investing in 1 to 2 deals a month. We are now getting super selective. We're looking at deals that, quite frankly, we don't belong in. And part of that is just the effort that was to establish the reputation relatively quickly as somebody you want to work with. Some of the best stuff, and I'm guessing you see this from some of the other emerging managers that you're talking about, are like relationships that came 10 years ago, and one conversation led to another. Anybody that's is being encouraged, like the only way to do something cool is to go to these other markets, I would push back and say the more that you can invest your roots deep into the place that you are from or where you have the relationships largely established, that bears fruit in a way that you wouldn't believe if you continue to kind of invest yourself. Oh, and by the way, like along the way, you have to have high integrity. You have to continue to invest in those relationships. You can't be a jerk and you can't screw people. So as long as you avoid those landmines, but stay where you are and continue to be present, you can accomplish some cool things no matter where you are.
Solid advice. You say 2 investments a month. That portfolio grows quickly and it compounds over time, not just in value, but in effort to support it. How do you scale the platform? How do you make sure that you can always be there? And, when you go home at night, you actually have time to spend with your daughters and not an avalanche of text messages and emails from all of your portfolio founders. Reid, I need help with this. This investor is chasing me about this. Or maybe you don't encounter the problem because maybe your checks are too small in that regards. And people don't come to you for this kind of things. What's the secret to maintaining this broad surface that is so localized where your reputation compounds as much as the portfolio?
I mean, the geography does help to run into founders and to have quick conversations and to be able to support the companies that we invest in is more convenient. We've created some systems that can ease the burden of the quarterly check-ins. When we invest in a company, we tell them that our job is to graduate you to a proper seed round. Here's what we think you're going to need to do that, and here's the timeline. What we want you to do is to get in the habit of showing your work through a monthly update or a bi-monthly update. This is what we'd expect in that. We want you to start building the principles and the practices of what we think your next investor will want to see. In that update, we're getting the asks. We take all of those every month. We distribute them to our LPs, and now here's the other part of the answer. We know what we're good at, and we know what we're not good at. I encourage my team to think thoughtfully about, if you're not an expert on the subject, don't try to be. Your job is to connect this founder who's struggling with some specific thing with the person who's a master in that. That's the cool part of our investment group is we have a lot of operators. We have people who have just done what they did. I would much rather they talk and work with them than me trying to fumble through something that I've never done before. So there's a little humility, there's a little technology, and there's absolutely community that backfills and supports, while maybe simultaneously knowing we're pre-seed investors. We don't want board seats. I'm not going to be breathing down your neck. If you need that, we probably shouldn't have invested in you. I trust that you have the people around you and the capacities within the team to take these next steps. I'm available if you need a therapist for some issue that is arising. Those are the calls that I get, and those are the text messages that I get. I'm also going to be able to help you dial in your pitch and make introductions for you because I'm good at those things. But beyond that kind of core set of what we want to be able to do as a team, we absolutely lean on the professional network that we've created to solve those problems. It wouldn't be possible otherwise.
We hear that quite a bit, that, by nature of the fund size, you have a more varied and a larger set of investors that have operator experience, maybe are still operating, maybe are still in charge of the companies or the exited companies in recent times. And so they actually can be value add to the portfolio. And the reason why they invest in you is because they want to have exposure to the founders that are underlying your fund.
Totally.
Versus a big institution that is yo, here's $20 million, Sequoia, just let me know how it's going. I don't need to get involved. Unless it's a very big outcome that relates to very much kind of the nature of my setup. You've never done this before, even though you've done this your entire career. What are the things that you've learned going from Fund 1 to Fund 2? What are the lessons that you brought with you that have helped you scale the practice and that you wish you knew before you started?
You have to effectively manage expectations and put yourself in a position to consistently under promise and over deliver. And if you do that time and again, it builds trust and totally frees you up to grow. Going from Fund 1 to Fund 2, when the sky was falling in venture and it was, people were just running away from the model or not feeling as cash rich as they did in 2020, we were very fortunate because early on I established the cadence of We're going to have a very detailed monthly update. I want everybody to know exactly what we're working on, and I want them to see how the sausage is made so that they can trust that, like, I haven't taken my eye off the ball. And it holds myself accountable. It holds the team accountable. So showing your work, managing the expectations, and knowing how to prioritize what's most important is kind of like things that I learned to get to this point, to have some success with Groove so far. What am I learning now? Learning a lot about negotiations and really starting to enjoy that. Really trying to think differently about the traditional venture model, challenging myself and challenging the team to say, like, yeah, I know that's kind of the normal path, but does that make sense for us? Pushing back on some of the expectations for what our future looks like, and making sure that we're designing this and continuing to develop the organization in a way that we can lean into our true advantages.
What you say is very much like a Maverick, but how you say it is very much like a Midwestern. And it's quite interesting.
It's probably the nicest thing anybody's ever said.
I'm being honest. It's paying close attention to what you're sharing. And like a lot of the things you're saying they're not new, but the way that you're delivering it, it's in a very empathetic, calm, and comfortable way. I think I can see how, if I'm a founder from Minnesota, I would be more inclined to take money from you than to go to San Francisco and get, like, taken for a ride by people that are a lot more brash, a lot more, maybe they share the same sort of like underlying ideals, but the way that they deliver those, it's very different from the way that you're talking to us right now. Who are other emerging managers, whether they're in your backyard or in a different yard, that you admire, that are doing maybe something similar or something different to what you're doing and that you look up to?
Locally, I'm in a cohort of I would call a newer guard in venture that started 8-ish years ago, of people that think similarly, as far as there's opportunity here. Let's introduce more people to this as an asset category. My predecessors, Ryan Brochar with Matchstick Ventures, Mary Grove and Brett Broll with Bread and Butter Ventures, like, they are good people. They're smart. They all kind of have differentiation, and I've learned a lot from them. So locally, I think that they've created this landscape that we've been able to join and be a partner in. More regionally, I think with the work that is being done at M25 in Chicago, I think that team is world class, super smart, also ecosystem builders. So I think they understand how to get the outcomes that they need from a venture perspective while investing in data and in networks and in bringing people together. They're very collaborative. They're very thought leadership strong. And so there are certainly others out there in the Midwest.
And let's say that I'm a founder in between the Twin Cities or need the whereabouts, and I want to get in touch with you, or maybe I'm an LP living in California and I heard this and I'm like, this sounds smart. I'd love to have a conversation. What's the best way to reach out to you?
REED at GrooveCap, GROOVECAP.com. You're welcome to send me an email and I'll respond. My pitch for the out-of-towners would be, there's more deal flow here than you'd expect. We're looking at maybe 30 to 50 deals a month. We're investing in 1 to 2, and everything is half price. But the ambition is the same. So if you like great deals in people who actually know what they're doing, this is a great place to invest.
I love to hear it, because it's not like this is half price. It's half price because there is less competition. Let's be clear. Like, it's not half price because it's half the quality. Like,
no,
it's half price because there is nobody driving up that price in a frenzy like it would be in a tier 1 market. And if you can capture those founders before they leave, like, you capture the upside along with the move. And I'm like, someone's going to have a very easy time with this one. But there is one question that we ask everybody before we part ways. And that is, when we're going to hang up the phone here, and you're going to be like, dang, I prepared for this. And Fabri didn't ask me this question. And I really wanted to share this thought. What is that?
I mean, I love the part of the conversation that we had in our initial introduction, as far as like, there's a lot of mechanics, and this is happening in our market, and I'm guessing it happens in a lot of others too, where asset managers that are sitting on top of very large funds, whether they be pensions or endowments or whatever, I think they've gotten lazy in a lot of respects. There's a disconnect between what the mission is of their organization and where their capital is going. And I think if they took a hard look at, who created those funds, what did they care about, who are the constituents that they're serving with those funds, and what do they care about, and actually match that to mirror the investment strategy, like, we would have very, very different activities happening in especially middle America. And it's just silly. It's just silly rules that somebody created a long time ago, and nobody cares to even challenge them or think about them critically. And so I'm excited that there are some people that are kind of waking up to this and thinking, why am I sending so much money to a completely different part of the world that's doing terrible things, when I could be investing in stuff that's local and making a meaningful difference. And the more that we can get people to understand that and ask those questions, like, game over.
Couldn't ask for a better ending, honestly. Like, this has been great.
No, it's been fun.
Love it. Love it. All right. Let me thank you once again. Thank you for dedicating your
My pleasure.
Thursday afternoon to us and sharing your story. I really welcome more of you in the marketplace, for the same reason that you were saying earlier, that the older guard is getting a little fat and lazy. And leaving a lot of opportunity on the table. And I think that venture capital can be a massive engine for social economic mobility across every geography. And I do believe that the future is distributed versus concentrated. And as much as like intellect is distributed evenly, I don't see why we have to eradicate people from communities that they live in, and then living kind of talent deserts behind, just because they have to move away. As an Italian, I've experienced that myself. I live in California right now. There is very little talent left where I'm from, and that's a massive loss for an entire community, an entire country. And I love to see that you're doing that in the context of Minnesota, and I really welcome it. And thank you for sharing your story, and thank you for dedicating the time. Reed, this has been great.
Yeah, my pleasure. And if you have any interest in launching Groove in Italy, let's have that conversation.
We should talk. All right. Thank you, sir.